Hello and welcome back to my channel. I have made a lot of Star Wars cakes lately, so I thought it would be fun to show you how I create my edible ISOMALT and fondant lightsabers. Let's start with Yoda's. I have some ISOMALT that I colored green from a previous project. To make the blade, I pour the ISOMALT into this mold, which is used to make ice sticks for water bottles. You can find this in my Amazon storefront. It works very well for this project. Tap to remove any air bubbles and remove after it's been cooled. To cut the ISOMALT stick down into the length I want for the project, I tap with a butter knife several times in one spot gently until it breaks. I've found this is the easiest way to control where it breaks on the ISOMALT stick. Looking at details from an image, either just from Google or just turning on the movies and pausing them with the lightsaber on the screen, I match the details with fondant the best I can. Yoda's has pretty basic shapes. I started with a gray tube of fondant, which I attached with some water, and then I covered both the ISOMALT and the fondant tube with more gray fondant, which will paint to match the lightsaber. Once it's painted, I leave it to dry for a couple of days on parchment paper. Yoda's was shorter, so his was able to stick on the cake with just a little buttercream. Next, we'll make Leia's lightsaber. Same process with the ice stick mold. We'll use blue for hers, as the movie shows us. Hers is pretty much gold and silver, so we'll use a brownish gold color and the gray. Again, just following an image from Google or right from the movie to get the details as close as I can. I also use a fondant extruding tool. I believe it was made for clay as well, but it works very well for fondant. I also have this in my Amazon storefront if you're looking for one. It makes rolling out long, thin pieces uniformly very easy. Keep in mind that the blade and the fondant handles are only attached together with water just at the end, so if you transfer them or move them around, you'll need to hold the entire piece, and usually with both hands. Oftentimes, I'll build it right onto parchment paper to minimize transferring. Another trick I came up with is that whenever I'm going to paint fondant gold or silver, I'll color the fondant a gold or a gray color, so I don't need to use quite as much paint or dust. Water is all I use to attach fondant to fondant and fondant to ISOMALT, so that's what you see me brushing on here. I'm just flattening these pieces against the handle with this fondant tool. Next, we'll add her on button here, and it should be ready to paint. Her handle was pretty much all metallic, so I covered it with the silver and the gold edible paints. I have a few different brands of this I use and like. You can also use a luster dust and an alcohol or extract source to make a paint that way as well. I have a few of the paints I use in my Amazon storefront too. And again, once it's finished, leave it to dry on parchment and use two hands. I even used a spatula here to anchor it onto the cake. This one also stayed on with a little buttercream. Let's make Kylo Ren's triple-bladed lightsaber next. ISOMALT colors very easily with just a drop. I probably didn't even need this much gel color. Let me know too if you're interested in an ISOMALT basics more detailed video. I would happily make one if there's interest out there. Very basically, I use the ISOMALT crystals and cook them at a ratio of 1 cup of crystals to a 1/4 cup of distilled water to about 320 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I color them and use them for different projects. We of course needed 3 different ISOMALT sticks for Kylo Ren's lightsaber. Before I trimmed the ISOMALT pieces down, I wanted to get an idea of size and proportion with the handles, so I started making a few of the handle pieces first to eye it up all together. His is mostly black with some details we'll paint and brush on later. Again, using just a butter knife to very gently and repeatedly tap the ISOMALT to get it break in the spot I wanted. I attached everything together with just some water. Water helps fondant and ISOMALT bond very well together, and then added some details as well. His lightsaber has a very thin wire going down the front of it, so I used a small piece of red fondant to create that. Here I'm just dry brushing on some luster dust. He has some kind of aging, antiquing gold and silver look to the handle of his lightsaber, so I'm doing that with some gold and silver luster dust. Also painting on some last details here. I attached this one to a fondant Death Star I had made for this birthday kiddo's cake. Since this lightsaber was quite top heavy and unbalanced, I used a piece of wire to anchor it into the cake you'll see here, and I painted it with a little red edible paint to disguise it. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear what you think of these.